Teamwork isn't just nice to have in business, it's the undisputed competitive advantage. When your team members work as a unified force, your whole operation benefits through higher productivity, thriving creativity, and unstoppable momentum. Welcome to the Impactful Teamwork Podcast, where we share with you strategies and tactics to help you develop game-changing teams so that you and your business can make a real difference in the world. Welcome back to another edition of Impactful Teamwork. My name's Julia Felton, and I'm going to be your host and guide for the next 15 to 20 minutes. As we're going to look today at some of the big shifts happening in the corporate landscape right now, because as I record this, the world is in turmoil. We're just seeing this incredible diversity. Environmental factors is probably the best word to use. As I sit here, LA is on fire, and yet on the east coast of the States, they are stuck in snow. So we've got this real dichotomy going on in the world today of just complete opposites happening at the same time. And we're seeing this in the political landscape as well. So I think we can all agree that the world is in turmoil and really undergoing a seismic shift. I've been talking for a long time now about how the rules of the game are changing, and the way that we run and lead businesses is no longer fit for purpose for the 21st century. And I think leaders who fail to adapt and manage to navigate through the uncertainty that we're living in are really going to fall foul, and in the worst case, their companies become bankrupt. Actually, it was really interesting last year, 2024, there was a record number of bankruptcies. So I think that's just testament to how quickly the world is changing, but actually how slowly we in the corporate world and in business are responding to these changes. So the trends driving transformation in 2025 aren't just incremental, they are really fundamental. So inspired by an article that I've read on Forbes, I just wanted to share with you what are some of the 5 big disruptive shifts that are shaping the corporate world in 2025. And the first of that is the end of corporate advantage. Because I think in the old paradigm, in the old world, we thought a corporate environment gave you competitive advantage, but actually that's not being the case nowadays. And interestingly, what I'm finding is a number of organizations, for example, that are actually really valuing hiring freelancers, fractional employees, contractors, because they're much more dynamic. The smaller businesses out there able to respond on a dime. The challenge with a lot of larger organizations is still they're a little bit of a Titanic, and they're unable to respond quickly to when clients need help. And I think this is why we're seeing a meteoric rise in consultancy, small consultancies, often people who have been in corporate before, like myself, coming out and setting up their own businesses, because we're able to go in and make an immediate impact. We don't get stuck in the bureaucracy that some of the larger organizations have. There's a kind of end of the corporate advantage going on. And I think once where a business could rely on predictable conditions like stable markets and loyal customers to build enduring advantages, these are long gone. Today's market is really demanding transient competitive advantage. We need businesses, like I said, like in the consulting area, that can focus on adaptability and speed and innovation, rather than clinging to outdated strategies. Companies that can go in, hit the ground running, and really make a difference. And I think companies that believe that their success came from a loyal customer base and their reputation, if they're not careful, they could become obsolete as we move forward. And there's actually a lot of hard data supporting this. The Accenture 2024 Pulse Change Index reported that the rate of change affecting businesses has surged by an incredible 138% since 2019. And 22.5% of organizations are reinventing themselves every 12 months or less. So that's incredible. That's businesses just reinventing themselves. So they are in this constant flux of change and adaptation because they realize that the products and services they're providing continually need to shift and evolve. There's also been some research done by the Reinvention Academy, and that revealed that only 5 years ago, 47% of managers said they needed to reinvent their businesses every 3 years or less. And today, nearly 1 in 5 organizations is embracing radical reinvention faster than their budgetary cycles. This is very interesting for strategic planning because we often talked about creating a 3 to 5 year plan. The problem is that our businesses are going to have materially changed within those 3 to 5 years. Actually, what we need to be creating in business are much more rolling forecasts because a 3 to 5 year plan is just going to be obsolete within a number of months. So this provides a real challenge for business leaders to think about how do we plan, how do we resource in an environment that is continually shifting and changing. It means that we need to really empower our team members. We need to get rid of the hierarchical structures that have been running businesses for so long because these just aren't adaptable enough to respond to all the changes going on. So in this new landscape, competitive advantage isn't permanent. It's just a fleeting thing that happens. So what does that mean for leaders? It means that leaders have got to shift from playing defensive to building the agility to seize the opportunities in the moment. And I think the winners in 2025 will be those companies that are master the art of reinvention and operate with a mindset of continuous adaptation. And we've talked previously on this podcast about we've seen companies that haven't adapted to the times, people like Nokia, like Kodak, like Blockbuster, to name just a few. There's clearly going to be a lot of changes in the insurance landscape as a result of these fires in LA. I was just listening to the news last night, and they're talking about the major company that's underwritten a lot of the property in LA that's been destroyed. They're saying that maybe the claims would be up to something like 30 billion. That company just clearly doesn't have that amount of cash reserves to fund that. So we're going to see some fundamental changes going on there. And there's even talk of potentially the US experiencing something akin to the financial crisis they had in 2008, 2009 with the Fannie Mae situation. So there's a lot of things going on out there that mean that what we thought was a competitive advantage previously won't be in 2025. The second trend that is being identified is this. It's that corporate sabotage goes to mass scale. So what do we mean by that? According to Gallup, 15% of global workforces are actively disengaged. So they're acting out their unhappiness and sabotaging their companies and bosses. And the way I like to think about this is if you just think a little bit about a boat, if 15% of your workforce actively disengaged, in the UK, the last time I saw the Gallup results, only 8% were actively engaged and everybody else was in the middle. So we had about 75% of the workforce just doing what they needed to get done, 15% actively sabotaging it, and 8% being highly engaged. So these 15%, they're a bit like you're on your boat, your business is trying to move forward, and these 15% have put out the anchor and are just disrupting everything. They're stopping your business getting any momentum and moving forward. And if we extrapolate that, we think that the worldwide workforce is 3.5 billion people. That means we've got a staggering 525 million people undermining the productivity, morale, and innovation within the workplace. You just see how that is just massively impacting performance. So why are so many people disengaged at work and actively sabotaging work? It's coming through burnout, disengagement, a feeling of a sense of powerlessness within the rigid work structures. And team members who are feeling undervalued or alienated. And actually, they are so undervalued and alienated that rather than just passively sabotaging, they're actively sabotaging the organization. So, this is a really sombering thought. And this is why it is so important that as leaders, we motivate, inspire, and engage our team members. Team members want to feel like they are making a difference in the world. They want to come to an organization and to a job every day where they feel valued and they're making a difference. So part of our role as leaders nowadays is to ensure that happens. Because the cost of all of these disengaged team members is enormous because it impacts not just the financial performance, but also the company culture. These are the people that are the naysayers and draw everyone else in with their stories of woe. So what's the solution? The solution lies for leaders in addressing the deeper issues, rebuilding trust, fostering inclusion and being, and aligning purpose with actions. Because without these changes, this sabotage economy is only going to grow. The third trend is the death of the 5-day work week. So I know there's been a lot of talk and a lot of companies trying to get people back to work, into the workplace every single day. But I think really, if we are really being honest with ourselves, we've seen a massive paradigm shift here. And that the traditional Monday to Friday grind is officially off limits. We've seen a number of companies start experimenting with 4-day work weeks. And for many companies, that is really yielding impressive results. It's leading to increased productivity, happier employees. So the benefits are hard to ignore. And these companies that have been doing this and experimenting are companies like Unilever and Microsoft Japan. And so I think it's something that's showing us that less can be more. And that actually, when team members know that they just need to focus for 4 days a week, they can be super focused and super productive and actually get more done in less time. So I think the challenge for leaders in 2025 is not going to be how do we keep the 9 to 5, because I think to all extents and purposes, that is obsolete. But it's how do we transition our working arrangements in a way that balances the flexibility with the business needs, whether that's flexible hours, flexible days of the week. We know there's a number of people that maybe want to work just for a few hours while their children are at school and then come back and work in the evening. So this idea of flexible hours. Some people prefer to get up early and work from, say, 5 till 2, or other people in the evening from, say, 4 till 12. So I think as businesses, we've got to learn, how do we accommodate these different working practices that our team members need? Because if we're able to accommodate that, that goes part of the way to helping make our team members feel more valued and more engaged. When they know that we recognize and appreciate what they need, they will show up, I believe anyway, in a more effective manner in the workplace. So the challenge might be for you is, how does your organization reinvent the way it thinks about time within the organization? So time, not just the traditional Monday to Friday, not the traditional 9 to 5, but how do we think about time, and how do we optimize the amount of time that our team members are working to best effect in a way that serves all of us? Because this isn't just about us accommodating our team members all the time. We also have to accommodate the business needs as well. And this is probably one of the biggest challenges that leaders are facing right now, is how to manage kind of the well-being of our team members against our business priorities. And a number of managers I've been working with, this is really the biggest challenge that they've got on their plate at the moment, is managing what can often seem as two conflicting priorities, the business priorities and looking after their team members. And when we think about the 5-day work week as well, we also need to think about how our businesses are going to start to adapt and change to respond to the future workforces that will come in place. This workforce generation beta that's just started in 2025, their requirements in the workplace in 20 years' time are going to be very different from what we've got now. And so there's something about us beginning to start thinking even now, because 20 years goes very quickly, about what needs to happen and how do we adapt and change to a generation that will be very AI savvy by the time they enter the workplace. The fourth trend is the rise of swarming leadership. So what do I mean by that? So I love this one particularly because this is something I've been talking about for a long time. And swarming leadership comes from the concept of the bees, and the bees have a swarm that they work together. Because in a slow moving, low volatile, and rarely disruptive economic environment, leadership was all about finding the right solutions and milking cash cows for years, if not decades. We know that from the reinvention data in the industrial area, companies used to have a lifespan of about 75 years. As we said, now they're reinventing themselves, 20% of them every year, most companies in sort of the 3 to 5 year period. So good management back then meant repeating success through efficiency and command and control leadership built hierarchy. But we know in today's permacrisis of constant disruption, this traditional model is no longer viable. And this is what I've been talking about for a long time. And that success now demands distributed leadership, this shared leadership that I often talk about, where people from different functions, departments, generations, and cognitive backgrounds all swarm and come together to solve a problem. And this provides us with different perspectives, and then we're able to get a really complete and holistic view of maybe how to solve the problem through all these diverse perspectives that come together. But this concept of shared leadership or swarming leadership, it only thrives in environments where agility and innovation are key. And it means that the hierarchies need to become much flatter. The great thing is it empowers all this cross-functional collaboration that we've been talking about, and it ensures the organization can respond to problems as they arise faster and more efficiently than any top-down approach ever could. Because as we talked about before, one of the challenges here is that some of the CEOs leading businesses are so accustomed to this top-down approach that actually for them to transition to this much flatter structure that's much more dynamic, where actually to some extent they have to give up a degree of control, is quite challenging. So as leaders, we need to ensure that we build a culture that fosters trust, communication, and a willingness to adapt roles dynamically in the moment. And therefore, I think what we're going to see in 2025 is organizations that look less robotic and like machines, and they're much more dynamic and fluid, and they look much more like a living organism, much more like we see in nature with this adaptability and flexibility. And the final trend that we're seeing in 2025 is this fact that reinvention is becoming mainstream. And I think the new title that we might find coming on board in organizations in 2025 is this role of a chief reinvention officer, somebody within the organization who is really taking hold of the reins and really looking at how the organization can continually reinvent and adapt to changing conditions. And as I've said previously, reinvention isn't about throwing out the old. It's actually about taking everything that was great in the past and tweaking and redefining that and making it even better for the future. And in fact, PwC's Global CEO Survey named continuous reinvention as the #1 priority for CEOs worldwide for 2 years in a row. And the fact that reinvention is becoming much more of a hot topic is even identified by the Financial Times that have actually released their inaugural Reinvention Champions list. And even universities are now beginning to think about the need to have a degree in reinvention. So what does that mean? It means that reinvention isn't just a tool for survival. It's the ultimate strategy for thriving in a volatile, uncertain world. I think in 2025, we're going to see that reinvention is no longer optional. It is the norm. So I think, to summarize, 2025 isn't just another year. It's a tipping point for corporate strategy. From the collapse of these traditional competitive advantage to the rise of swarming leadership and reinvention as mainstream disciplines. This playbook is changing fast, ladies and gentlemen. And the question for you is, how are you all going to adapt and respond to these changes? Are you going to lead the change, or are you going to be left behind? And I'm sure there's plenty of other trends out there too. But these are the 5 that I just wanted to highlight to you today, because I really do think that they're very important. And I'd really love you to give some focus to them and think about, how are you going to reinvent and adapt your business so that it can continue to thrive and survive in 2025? We know the way that you have to do that is through your people and through great leadership. So I'd love you to share with me what you are doing. And indeed, I'd love to hear of any other trends that you think that you would like to add to the list to enable meaningful growth and development of your organization in 2025. So I hope you found that really useful food for thought. And I look forward to catching up with you in it again. Thanks for listening to the Impactful Teamwork Podcast. Please stay tuned for future episodes and do subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. If you've enjoyed this episode, please leave a rating on your favorite platform. Recommendations are essential for attracting new listeners. Please follow us on social media at Julia Felton and at Business Horsepower. And if there are any topics you'd like us to cover on future episodes, please do let me know. Remember, you and your team are always making an impact. What impact will you make today?